Hi, my name's Jacob Panons. I'm a reporter for Sussex World, and this is latest TV news. And we're going to be talking about Brighton and Hove Albion. So, Sam, you were at the AEK Athens game, Brighton's first European game. What was the atmosphere like there?
Incredible. It was an amazing atmosphere. It was obviously an historic occasion for the club. Never been in European competition before. So I think the fan base, you could see really on Twitter throughout the day, there was a real sense of kind of excitement and people just waking up instantly excited for the day ahead. And you really felt that when you got to the stadium, really, there was a real sense of excitement around the ground. And obviously things didn't start off on the best note when it was confirmed that Lewis Dunk wouldn't be playing, and that was a huge blow. You kind of knew when the team sheets were announced that would be tricky for Brighton, but obviously it gave a chance for Igor Junior's Julio to make an impression, and obviously things just didn't work out as they might have hoped, and it was a difficult night for Brighton, really, against a side that was really smart in the way they played. They really dealt with Brighton's threat really well. And they did manage to win the game. Athens 3-2. It was an exciting game. I think obviously one that Brighton probably should have won with the chances they had, but they really did find it difficult to break down Athens like they often do in the Premier League. And it was a real kind of eye opener to how different Europe is to the Premier League.
Definitely. And Frankie, obviously, you could argue that this home game against Athens was the easiest game of the group. You know, they're in a group of death. How do you think this is going to fare with them going forward and getting through the group?
It was always going to be challenging, regardless of how they did against Athens. But I think it is a wake-up call to how difficult all European games can be. I don't think there was ever going to be an easy game for any team that Brighton drew, whether that be the three teams they did eventually draw in Group B, or if they drew another sort of lesser side from a lesser nation, say from Azerbaijan or Slovenia. So like any of those teams, it was always going to be difficult because Brighton are completely new to this. And teams like AEK Athens, although they do not have a star-studded lineup in regards to players that are very well known across Europe, they are Greek champions. And that means that they've got a team of winners and know how to get through tough games. Because let's not forget, in the Greek league, there are teams like Panathinaikos and Olympiakos who've got much bigger budgets than teams like AEK Athens. So that was always going to be the problem and stumbling block. And I think going into that thinking that Brighton would be favourites was probably a foolish mistake for fans to make, because Brighton are always going to be underdogs because they are so new to this format. In regards to the rest of the group, though, I don't think they have much to be worried about, because they still played well. They still have the potential to beat all three teams, especially at home with the home advantage. You've got to look at the form of Ajax. For starters, obviously they're in complete disarray at the moment. So, although it's the biggest name on paper, that in regards to actually on the pitch, I don't think they have much to fear. Same with Marseille at home, although Marseille have built a very good side this year and are doing very well in Ligue 1. Those two games, I think, at home at the Amex are still the potential to pick up 6 points. And obviously they'll learn a lot from the AEK Athens experience and look to beat them away from home as well when they travel to Greece. So Brighton also play very, very well away from home and deserve, but we've seen that record as well. So although all three away games will be challenging, they will fancy themselves due to their track record of how they've played in big games against the top six away from home in the last year or so. So it was a disappointing blow, but I think it's more of a learning experience of how European football is played, and I still think they can come out quite strongly from this group.
And I was speaking to one Brighton fan after the game, and he said he didn't even care about the result. He said, and a lot of people he knew as well weren't that bothered by the result because they were so happy to be in Europe. Is that something you noticed at the game, Sam, that people were more appreciative of the position they're in now rather than that hung up on the result?
I think in the days following the game, I think people kind of maybe look back and just think how incredible it is. But I definitely felt in the stadium at the time, there was a real sense of disappointment, I think, especially when those goals went in, especially the 3-2 goal where you really thought Brighton had equalised for a second time. They're in the ascendancy and you thought there's only going to be one winner from then on. And then to lose it after that was a bit of a blow. And you did kind of feel like the atmosphere was kind of sucked out of the stadium at that point. You definitely felt there was a little bit of disappointment. But as you say, I think when you look back on it and you really reflect on things, and just to be in Europe is incredible, really. It just shows how far the club has come. And as Frankie said, the group is nowhere near over, you think. Brighton kind of historically do struggle against the so-called lesser teams that do sit back with a little bit of a low block. And that's something that Brighton don't always find easy. But against teams like Ajax and Marseille, obviously, from their 3-3 draw, you can see they're going to go at it and they're going to really come at Brighton from from an attacking perspective, you would assume, and that should play into Brighton's hands. So it'll be interesting to see how streetwise Ajax and Marseille have to be to kind of counteract Brighton. But I think, as you say, there's definitely no reason to be disappointed with that, and there's so many more games to win in Europe and to try and get through to the knockout rounds.
Definitely. And Frankie, we sort of saw following the Athens game and going into the Bournemouth game, De Zerbi rested a couple of players, including Matoma, who didn't play in the first half. And then when he did come in the second half, made a big difference. Do you think this was sort of the first maybe setback or the first experience the side have had with this rotation that's been forced upon them due to their European journey?
As in, did it have a negative effect?
Or how do you think the club will adapt with it going forward? And do you think it maybe was a shock for the dressing room to, deal with something where this is a pretty inexperienced team in regards to European football?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that they probably changed too much going into Sunday's game. I think they made 9 changes before the Bournemouth game. As much as obviously they will still have to adjust to playing 3 times a week, you still need to keep the core of the team the same. That's a principle in football that any team can follow, because obviously that is what makes a successful side, is having a core group of players that play week in, week out. To make 9 changes, although there is a very strong bench, Brighton have done, their squad depth is a lot better. It's about utilising more your substitutes, I think, which is I think De Zerbi learnt from the game on Sunday. Obviously, they didn't play particularly well in the first half. They were 1-0 down. In the first 25 minutes, didn't really get going. Sort of a bit slight hangover from the Athens game emotionally, I would say, plus the fact that it was a whole new team playing. I think the utilisation of players off the bench in the last 25, 30 minutes of games, which could have been used better in the Athens game, I thought, to be honest, I thought the substitutes could have been a bit more clever. They were used effectively against Bournemouth, and that's what got them the result. But I think going forward, if they can use those more effectively, the squad rotation thing won't become as major an issue as maybe some may fear, because there's actually quite a good, strong bench in place now for Brighton to cope with playing 3 times a week.
And just to sort of touch on there, Frankie, with Bournemouth, they're still without a win in the Premier League with their new manager. How do you see them going for the rest of the season?
I think that I don't actually feel there's too much to fear for Bournemouth. I know it's been a difficult start. They've obviously got a new manager in place, and they've spent a lot of money in the summer for a team who'll be battling against relegation. I think their home form will help them. I think they'll have a strong. It'll be difficult to get results at the Vitality Stadium. I think that was shown in the Chelsea game. Although Chelsea created more opportunities, I felt Bournemouth were always in the game. And if you're in the game in those sort of grounds with 15, 20 minutes to go, it can really spur the home side on. There was a lot of quality in there as well, I think, going forward. Kluivert, the new signing, Sinistera, obviously Solanke and Billing, who are already there, Ryan Christie as well. They've got the players in place there to cause problems. And then we showed it in the first half against Brighton that they have the quality to hurt teams. So it's been difficult, and obviously they're still getting with the fact that they've changed manager in the summer. But regarding, are they in the worst 3 teams in the Premier League this season? I don't think so. So they'll be in the lower half for sure. They probably will be in a relegation fight, I don't doubt. But I see there is enough there for Cherries fans to not worry too much about relegation.
And Sam, obviously coming back from a goal down to win, is that just another positive for Brighton, another thing they can take onto the rest of the season, that they know they can come back from a deficit?
100%. It just shows kind of the quality they have, obviously, as Frankie said, on the bench to be able to change things up. Things weren't going to plan in the first half. You can bring on a player with the quality of Karim Matoma, and literally takes him 15 seconds to find the net. And it was nice to see Ansu Fati involved in the goal as well. It's his first goal involvement since he's come in, and to be able to bring those 2 players on at half time and just to change the game in a matter of seconds just speaks volumes. Really, it just shows how important that squad depth is. And as Frankie said, last season they didn't really have that. They were sticking with the same players, and you maybe saw a little bit of fatigue as the season went along. But also they still managed injury despite that. But now just having that squad depth to really rotate players, and we've seen that the team's been different every week so far, and they've won 5 out of 6 games in the league so far. So you have to wonder, how good could they be when they have maybe a settled side and players that are getting frequent running games, hitting their top form. It could be incredible for Brighton, really. Well, I think one player that does need to stay fit is Lewis Dunk, and we've really seen that with the Athens game. When he's not there, you really do miss him. And I know obviously Igor will develop into the role and will, I'm sure, improve as time goes on. But it was a real baptism of fire for him, really. And there was such an obvious kind of lack of leadership and obviously saw them concede twice from set pieces, and that doesn't really happen when Lewis Dunk's there. And from his height, he can clear it, and also he just makes sure everyone's in the right place. So it's vital that he stays fit as long as possible, like he did last year. But I think in most areas of the pitch, there is always someone you can rotate out, and it was great to see Believer get his first appearance against Bournemouth. I think he looked really good when he came on. Seems to slot really well into the midfield. So I'd really like to see him start against Chelsea, so we can see how he does from the start.
Also, you've been impressed with Believer, and Frankie, what are your thoughts on Ansu Fati so far?
Yeah, he's adjusting. There's obviously the quality and talent has been shown in glimpses there. He doesn't seem fully fit to me, which is, I think, was to be expected considering the injury problems he has sustained over the last year or so. And the fact he hasn't played many games this pre-season or at the start of the season with Barcelona, I think this is why the loan move was there. But I expected it to be a slow burner. I didn't expect him to hit the ground running after, I said, the track record that we've seen. But he's clearly a guy with immense talent. And I think, as we saw towards the back end of last season with people like Julio and Ciso, I think he'll really grow into this side. Learn, obviously, it's a very difficult style of football to learn and to adapt to quickly. But I think post-Christmas, maybe sort of January, February time, I think we can really see Fatty become a key member of this side. But as of yet, not been a world beater, but certainly a player of immense quality.
And Brighton have got Chelsea in the League Cup tomorrow night. So by the time this airs, the game will probably be done. But just to kind of quickly touch on with you guys, how do you think it's going to go? First of all, with you, Frankie, how do you think it's going to go with another competition? Do you think De Zerbi's going to be that bothered about the League Cup this season?
Absolutely, yeah. It's an opportunity to win trophies, which is what I think the club is aspiring to do. I think that is the next step for them, is to win a trophy. And I think they were very disappointed not to go further in the Carabao Cup last year when they got knocked out by Charlton in the sort of quarter-final stage. So I think they'll see tomorrow's game as a real opportunity to make a mark. And I think we can see more rotation again. But I have to say at the moment, Brighton's rotation is a lot stronger than Chelsea's, considering the form that they're in, also the injury problems they seem to be having as well. So I can imagine Chelsea will play a second string team of mainly youth team players, but Brighton's second string team is actually full of first teamers that could will want to be knocking on the door of the first team. So I would imagine that Brighton will go into that looking to name a fairly strong team, similar to the sort of team they would name as a rotation team, and come away with the victory because they're playing far better football and they're in much better form than their opponents.
Yeah, 100%. I think Brighton are definitely going into this game as favourites. And Sam, how do you see Chelsea approaching this game? Because obviously they've had a horrendous start to life in the Premier League. Do you think they're going to want to keep their players fit for the Premier League? Or do you think they'll see this, like Brighton maybe, as a chance to get some silverware and maybe brush off the cobwebs and maybe turn this around for their season? Maybe they can see it as a good season if they get silverware.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, really. I think in the position they're in, the injuries they've got, I kind of agree with Frankie. I think they're going to go with a weakened side in the Carabao Cup. I don't think it's going to be a priority for them this season. I don't think it's been such a terrible start for them. It's kind of continued from last year. There's kind of hope for Chelsea fans that Pochettino coming in. Obviously, they made some massive big money signings again in the summer. And obviously, Nkunku's been out injured. He was a big miss. And Jackson hasn't made the best of starts up front. But it's been such a strange couple of years for Chelsea, really, with the quality of their team. They just haven't been able to gel at all. Hasn't worked for them at all, the amount of money they've spent. So I feel like, I think they're going to have to start getting some points in the Premier League and not risk any more injuries to any key players. So I think it's unlikely we'll see a really strong side in the Cup. I don't think now. Obviously, they'll want to win it. They'll want to kind of maybe get a bit of momentum, get a bit of winning streak going, and obviously every win's important. And obviously there's a little bit of rivalry going on with Brighton at the moment, so I think maybe they'd want to win for that point of view as well. But I can't imagine they're going to put all their big hitters out there.
No, and even when they do, they don't seem to win anyway. So I think Brighton have got to be seen as the favourites in that one. I'm sure they'll, like you say, be relishing maybe advancing over Chelsea tomorrow night. And Frankie, we've got Aston Villa away on the weekend. This is going to be a tough one. Obviously, Villa have been in fantastic form, not just this season, but this calendar year. And I guess at the moment, they've been seen as direct rivals with Brighton, as they're both kind of the best of the rest almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I wouldn't even say they're the best of the rest anymore. I think they are both Champions League qualification contenders. I think they've got to see themselves as that. I think they've both been playing very, very well, very different styles of football. But yeah, Aston Villa, I've spent well. I've spent big, but I've spent well in their recruitment. I think obviously the most important decision they've made over the last year is employing a world-class manager in Unai Emery, which is the same thing that Brighton did and Roberto De Zerbi. So it's two brilliant tacticians working with two very, very talented squads. And I think we've seen it again already this season. We're seeing United are not playing well, Chelsea obviously not playing particularly well, and I still feel with teams like Spurs and Liverpool, there's still maybe some bumps in the road coming up. So outside again of Chelsea, outside again of City and Arsenal, I would say it's still very unclear about who would take third and fourth place. So I feel for teams like Brighton and Villa who are continuing their good form from last season, while still, and I think that will still be their main focus, although they're both enjoying European adventures, is the fact that they can capitalise again and go one further. So it's a fantastic game to be watching on Saturday to see how these two master tacticians try and work each other out. I think it'd be a really, really good game.
And what do you think the score's going to be?
Well, I don't imagine a high-scoring affair again, simply for the fact that Emery refuses to allow his teams to be involved in games like that, especially against teams he would feel would be superior to them in sort of ball possession. So I'm going for a Villa 2-1 win.
And Sam, how do you see the game playing out? Do you think it's going to be a pretty even contest?
Yeah, definitely an even contest. I think both, as Frankie said, both teams are quality. They've got quality all around the pitch. They're both in form. Villa will be obviously delighted with their win over Chelsea at the weekend, and I've been really impressed by Diaby so far. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing him play when I'm at the game on Saturday. Yeah, I think it could go either way. Really, I think Brighton, obviously their away form has been brilliant, but Emery, as Frankie said, is a mastermind when it comes to these kind of games, and it'll be really interesting to see the De Zerbi and Emery go kind of head to head and what tactics we really see. And I don't think it will be a massively high scoring game. I think I'm going to go for a draw personally. I think either 1-1 or 2, if it is a high scoring game. But yeah, and I think it'd be a good one. I think it'd be good to see two informed sides that really are looking to become a top 4 team go at it, really. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if you're looking at teams in the Premier League at the moment, there aren't many teams that are properly in form other than Brighton, maybe Arsenal, maybe Tottenham, Man City and Villa as well. So it's going to be an exciting game. And also, how do you see Unai Emery's reputation changing, Frankie? Obviously, when he left Arsenal, he received a bit of criticism and almost the social media trolls were in his back. And now it seems like he's sort of regained that reputation in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, it was the Arsenal job was always going to be a difficult one due to the structure that was in place. I think Arteta has now benefited from it, but they were still trying to get the footballing operational side up to world-class standards. So he was very much tackling that while also tackling a job in which we've noticed with the work he's done for teams like PSG and Arsenal that he struggled in non-Spanish speaking countries, whereas with Villarreal and Seville he was clearly flourishing and was very, very successful. But I think now he's coming to a club where it's not as chaotic as it was at Arsenal after obviously Arsene Wenger left, and the signings and recruitment for him was not particularly great. I think what we're seeing now is he's in a club that has that structure in place, and we're seeing what he does best, which is setting up teams to win football games. It's a squad that, again, we saw with Steven Gerrard. It's a lot of those players still there. They're playing. All of them have improved under him, and that's down to the quality of his coaching and the quality of the way of his team set up. It's not particularly entertaining, I wouldn't say. It's not particularly attractive on the eye, but he knows how to get results, and also he knows how to win competition. So we're now seeing that in England, which is great to see. And I think under a little less spotlight than maybe a top 6 club, he's been able to do that a bit more without so much scrutiny. But I've never had any doubt that he's one of the best coaches in the world for sure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, we will have our new segment back, and we'll also be touching a little bit more following that game as well. So make sure you check out the Sussex World website for all the latest from news and sport.